I never imagined a hand-knitted scarf could unravel my entire life and stitch it back together into something completely new. This is the story of a single father, a winter market, and the moment a quiet woman stepped forward with a gift she made in secret. A story about noticing and being noticed, and how the bravest act of love often begins with the simplest thread. It begins with Leo, a single dad doing his best, and his 5-year-old daughter Chloe. Every Saturday, their ritual was the farmer's market, a fleeting slice of normalcy in a life fractured by split custody and silent loneliness. He was just trying to keep her warm. He never considered that someone was watching, memorizing the color of her coat, counting the weeks. This is what happens when a quiet act of observation becomes an unbearable act of courage, and a simple scarf holds a question that changes everything. For Leo, Saturdays were the entire point. The other 6 days were a blur of spreadsheets, quiet dinners for one, and a silent apartment that felt more like a waiting room than a home. But Saturdays belonged to Chloe. The custody agreement gave him every other weekend, which meant he had to compress a universe of fatherhood into 48 hours that always vanished too quickly. So he built rituals. The farmer's market was the cornerstone. Every Saturday morning, rain or shine, they would drive to the old brick pavilion at the edge of town. Chloe would chatter the whole way about what she might see: the honey man, the flower lady, the baker with the free cookie samples. Leo would listen, his heart simultaneously full and aching, because her voice was the only sound that made the silence bearable. Divorce had been finalized 8 months ago. Claire, Chloe's mother, had moved across town to a modern condo that smelled like new paint and ambition. She was a graphic designer whose career was soaring, and the life she wanted had simply outgrown the one they'd built together. There was no dramatic betrayal, just a slow, quiet drifting apart until one day they looked at each other and realized they were already living separate lives. The split was civil, almost polite, which in some ways made it harder. There was no villain, just two people who no longer fit. Leo had kept the house, a modest bungalow with a mortgage that now stretched his budget painfully thin. He was a structural engineer, good at his job, but his salary was a steady drumbeat against the rising costs of a life split in two. Every expense was calculated. The $10 for a bunch of sunflowers from the market was a luxury, but he bought them anyway because Chloe loved to put them in a vase on her nightstand. On this particular Saturday in late October, the air had the sharp, clean bite of approaching winter. The market was bustling, filled with the scent of wood smoke from a portable fire pit, spiced cider, and the earthy smell of fallen leaves. "Daddy, my ears are cold," Chloe announced, as they wandered past a stall heaped with gourds and pumpkins. "I told you to wear the hat Grammy knit you." "It's itchy," she said, as if this was a universal and undeniable law of physics. Leo smiled, unwound his own scarf, a thick gray wool thing, and wrapped it around her head like a makeshift hood. It swallowed her small face, making her giggle. "There, now you look like a little scarf monster." "Rah," she growled, holding up her mittened hands. This was their normal. This was the life he was desperately trying to hold together for her, silly, warm, anchored in simple routines. He was so focused on her, on the list in his mind, apples, bread, maybe a pumpkin if they could carry it, that he didn't notice he was being watched. But she was. Her name was Evelyn. She had a small stall at the far end of the pavilion where she sold her knitted goods, hats, mittens, intricate lace shawls. She was in her late 20s, with a quiet demeanor that made her easy to overlook in the cheerful chaos of the market. She wasn't shy in a fearful way, but thoughtful, observant, the kind of person who preferred listening to speaking. She had noticed Leo and Chloe weeks ago. There was something about their dynamic that caught her eye, the careful way he knelt to explain what Brussels sprouts were, the patience in his voice when she asked for the third time if they could get a puppy, the way his smile didn't always reach his eyes when he thought no one was looking. And she noticed the scarf, or more accurately, she noticed its absence. The first chilly Saturday, Leo had given his scarf to Chloe. The next week, he did the same thing, wrapping it around her neck while he shoved his hands deep into his coat pockets. By the third week, Evelyn found herself watching for them, her needles quietly clicking as she saw him, once again, sacrifice his own comfort without a second thought. It was a small thing, a tiny, quiet act of paternal love that probably seemed insignificant to him. But to Evelyn, who spent her days creating warmth with her own hands, it was a language she understood perfectly. It spoke of a kindness that was instinctual, not performed. She didn't plan to intervene, it was none of her business. But the image stuck with her, the little girl with the red, cold-tipped ears, the father who didn't seem to mind the chill himself. One evening, looking at a skein of soft, merino wool in a color called frostberry, a mix of pinks and purples and blues like a winter sunrise, she simply started knitting. She didn't ask why. She just let her hands work, the rose growing into a small, child-sized scarf, dotted with little snowflakes she embroidered with silver thread. Meanwhile, Leo's world remained tightly focused on the fragile ecosystem of co-parenting. The handoff with Claire was always a delicate operation. It happened at 4 o'clock on Sunday afternoons at a neutral location, a playground halfway between their homes. That Sunday, as Chloe zoomed down the slide for the 10th time, Leo stood with Claire in an awkward silence that had become their normal. "She seems good," Claire said, watching Chloe. "Happy." "She is. We had a good weekend. The market, then we carved that tiny pumpkin she picked out. It's currently guarding our front step." Claire nodded, her eyes not leaving Chloe. "I'm glad." A pause. "Listen, my firm is sending me to a conference in Denver next month. It's Thursday through Sunday. Would you be able to take her that extra weekend? I can adjust the schedule after." "Of course," Leo said immediately, though his mind was already recalculating work deadlines. "Always." "Thanks, I know it's short notice." Claire finally looked at him, and for a flicker of a second, he saw the ghost of the woman he'd married, not the strained co-parent, but the person he'd once told everything to. "How are you, Leo? Really?" The question caught him off guard. They didn't do really, they did logistics. "I'm okay," he said, the automatic response, "keeping busy." She studied him, and he felt seen in a way that was now uncomfortable. "The house isn't too quiet." "It's fine," he lied. The quiet was a physical presence, a weight he carried from room to room. Before she could press further, Chloe came barreling over, saving him. "Mommy, did Daddy tell you about the scarf monster?" The moment passed. The conversation reverted to the safe, shallow waters of schedules and snacks, but driving home alone afterward, the quiet of the car felt heavier than ever. Claire had moved on, was building a new, vibrant life. He was just managing, keeping the clocks ticking in a house full of memories. The following Saturday at the market, the cold had deepened. Leo saw Chloe's ears go pink within minutes. He went through the now familiar routine, unwinding his scarf. "Again?" Chloe asked, already knowing the answer. "Again," he said, tucking the ends in. "Scarf monster power activate." He didn't see Evelyn watching from her stall, her heart doing a strange little flip. She saw the habitual gesture, the father's bare neck exposed to the wind, and she looked down at the finished scarf folded neatly in her lap. It was soft, it was warm, it was made with a care she couldn't fully explain. All week, a quiet anxiety had grown in her. The act of giving a gift to a stranger, especially a child, was fraught with unspoken rules. Would it be seen as kind, or would it be weird? Would she be overstepping? She was a background character in their Saturday story, the lady who sold hats. She had no right to insert herself. But as she watched Leo guide Chloe toward the apple cider stand, his shoulders hunched slightly against the cold, the doubt was overruled by a stronger impulse. It wasn't about him, she told herself. It was for the little girl. A child should be warm. Her hands were trembling slightly as she picked up the scarf and stepped out from behind the safety of her table. She moved through the crowd, the colorful wool a bright spot in her hands. Her mind went blank. She hadn't rehearsed what to say. Leo was handing Chloe a small cup of cider when he sensed a presence hovering nearby. He turned, and for the first time he really saw her, the woman from the knitting stall. She had kind, nervous eyes, and she was holding out a small, beautifully knitted scarf. "I'm sorry to interrupt," she said, her voice softer than he expected. I've noticed your daughter the past few weeks. I made this For her, so you can keep yours. She extended the scarf toward him, not Chloe, as if handing it to him was the only way her courage would hold. The gesture was so vulnerable, so utterly sincere, that Leo was struck silent. He looked from the scarf, a masterpiece of color and careful stitching, to her face, which was flushed with a mixture of cold and acute self-consciousness. He was trying to process it, to find the right words. Asterisk, thank you, but we can't accept this, or this is incredibly kind, asterisk. When Chloe, with the unfiltered curiosity of a 5-year-old, reached out and touched the soft wool. Snowflakes, she exclaimed, her eyes wide. Daddy, look, it has little snowflakes. The woman, Evelyn, let out a small, relieved breath, her gaze dropping to Chloe. I thought you might like them. In that suspended moment, with the market swirling around them, Leo understood several things at once. This was not a casual gesture. This was weeks of observation. This was hand-knitted, which meant hours of work. This was a quiet woman stepping far outside her comfort zone for a child she didn't know. The weight of it, the profound, unexpected kindness of it, landed in his chest with an almost physical force. He took the scarf from her hands. It was impossibly soft. This is, he began, but his voice failed him. He tried again. This is unbelievably kind. Thank you, I don't even know your name. It's Evelyn, she said, and she finally met his eyes. I'm Leo, and this is Chloe. Hi, Evelyn, Chloe chirped, already wrapping the new scarf around her neck. It's so soft. Do you make lots of scarves? I do, Evelyn said, smiling properly for the first time. An awkward, hopeful silence settled between the adults. The transaction was complete, but the moment wasn't over. The normal script would be to say thank you again and walk away. But the gift felt like an open door, and something in Leo, something tired of the quiet and the solitude, didn't want to close it. Can we, he started, gesturing vaguely toward her stall, can we at least buy a coffee or some cider to say thank you? This is really above and beyond. Evelyn looked surprised, then glanced back at her table, which was unattended. I shouldn't leave my stall. Right, of course, Leo said, feeling suddenly foolish. Sorry, I didn't think. But she added quickly, I was about to take a break. My friend watches it for me sometimes, just for a few minutes. I could get a cup of cider with you, if that's okay. The agreement was fragile, tentative. Leo nodded, a smile breaking through his own surprise. That would be great. He watched as she hurried back to her stall, spoke to a woman at the next table, and then returned, pulling on her own coat. As they walked the short distance to the cider stand, Chloe between them, chattering about the snowflakes again, Leo felt a shift in the atmosphere of his Saturday. The routine had been broken. A new variable had been introduced. They got their ciders and stood near the fire pit, the steam from their cups mingling in the cold air. The conversation was halting at first, talk of the weather, the market, how long she'd had her stall. But then Chloe asked Evelyn if she could make a scarf for her stuffed owl, and Evelyn replied with complete seriousness that she'd need to know the owl's favorite colors, and just like that, the ice was broken. Leo learned she'd been knitting since she was a child, taught by her grandmother, that she loved the market for its sense of community, that she lived in a small apartment not far from here. It was all surface level, but there was an ease to it, a lack of pretense. She listened with that same quiet attention he'd unconsciously noticed from afar. After 15 minutes, Evelyn glanced at her watch. I should get back. Thank you for the cider, Leo. It was really nice to meet you properly, Chloe. Will you be here next week? Chloe asked, clutching her new scarf. Evelyn's eyes flicked to Leo, then back to Chloe. I'm here every Saturday. Good, Chloe declared, as if settling an important matter. Leo didn't know what to say. Thank you again, Evelyn. Really, this meant a lot. She gave a small, shy nod and turned to walk back to her stall. Leo and Chloe watched her go, the vibrant scarf around Chloe's neck a stark contrast to the grey afternoon. The rest of their market trip passed in a bit of a daze for Leo. He kept replaying the encounter, the vulnerability in her gesture, the warmth in her smile when she talked to Chloe, the strange, hopeful feeling that had sparked in his chest as they talked by the fire. That night, as he tucked Chloe into bed, she was still wearing the scarf. "I love it, Daddy. Evelyn is nice." "Yeah," Leo said, smoothing her hair. "She is." He spent the evening in the living room, the quiet of the house feeling different. It wasn't filled, exactly, but the memory of the interaction seemed to hold the silence at bay. He thought about texting a friend to describe the weird, wonderful thing that had happened, but he didn't. It felt too fragile to share, like speaking it aloud might break the spell. The week passed slowly. On Wednesday evening, during his midweek dinner with Chloe, she asked if they could show the scarf to her mom. When Claire picked her up, Chloe proudly displayed it. "A customer at the market made it for her," Leo explained, downplaying the event. "Wasn't that nice?" Claire examined the intricate work. "This is handmade. This is really high quality. That was incredibly generous of a stranger." She gave Leo a curious look. "Just a customer." "Just a customer," he said, feeling oddly defensive. But he wasn't so sure. And as Saturday approached again, he found himself watching the clock, a new, unfamiliar anticipation cutting through the usual weekend routine. He told himself it was just because Chloe was so excited to show Evelyn she was wearing the scarf. It was about being polite, about showing gratitude. Saturday morning arrived, grey and drizzly. As they pulled into the market, Leo's eyes went immediately to the far end of the pavilion. Her stall was there, and she was there, arranging a pile of mittens. Chloe spotted her too, and before Leo could stop her, took off running through the crowd, the Frostbury scarf flying behind her. "Evelyn, look, I'm wearing it." Leo followed, his heart beating a little faster than the situation warranted. He saw Evelyn look up, her face breaking into a genuine, bright smile that transformed her features. She said something to Chloe, who beamed back. By the time Leo reached them, Chloe was already explaining that the scarf had kept her ears very warm all week. "Hi," Leo said, feeling suddenly awkward. "Hi," Evelyn replied, her smile softening but remaining. There was another one of those pauses, filled only by the market's noise. The script from last week was used up. Now what? It was Chloe, again, who bypassed all adult hesitation. "Daddy, can Evelyn have cider with us again?" Leo looked at Evelyn, a question in his eyes. She hesitated for only a second before nodding. "I'd like that. Let me just tell my friend." And so a second Saturday began with cider by the fire pit. The conversation was easier this time. They talked about their weeks. Leo mentioned a challenging project at work. Evelyn talked about a custom order for a baby blanket. Chloe interjected with stories from kindergarten. It felt natural, comfortable. For 45 minutes, Leo didn't think about the quiet house or the spreadsheets waiting for him or the delicate balance of his life. He was just present. When they said goodbye, the "see you next week" was implicit, understood. That pattern held for a month. Saturday mornings evolved. They would do their market shopping, then inevitably end up at Evelyn's stall. Sometimes they'd bring her a coffee. Sometimes she'd have a small new trinket for Chloe, a knitted headband with a tiny flower, a pair of fingerless gloves. The conversations deepened. Leo learned she was an introvert who found social events draining, that she loved old bookstores and documentaries about the ocean. She learned he was a puzzle solver by nature, that he missed playing the guitar, that his greatest fear was failing Chloe. One Saturday in early December, the market was decked with lights and smelled of pine and gingerbread. Chloe was with Claire for the weekend, a switch to accommodate her conference. Leo had come to the market alone out of habit, telling himself he just needed some fresh air, but his feet carried him directly to Evelyn's stall. She looked up, surprised and then pleased. "No Chloe today." "With her mom this weekend," he said, shoving his hands in his pockets. I just wanted to pick up some bread, but I saw you were here." "Bread is at the other end," she said, a gentle tease in her voice. "I know," he smiled. "How's business?" They talked for 20 minutes. It was the first time they'd spoken without Chloe as a buffer. The dynamic was different, quieter, more direct. He learned she was having a slow season, was worried about making rent in January. She learned he was dreading the long, empty weekend ahead. "Would you," he started, then stopped, the question feeling too bold. Would you want to get a proper coffee sometime, not just standing in the cold? I know a quiet place not far from here." Evelyn stared at him, her knitting needles falling still. The silence stretched, and Leo immediately regretted asking. He was about to retract it, to play it off as a casual suggestion when she spoke. "I'd like that," she said softly. "When?" "How about tomorrow, Sunday, say 2 o'clock?" "Okay," she said, 2 o'clock. He gave her the name of the cafe, and they parted with a new, nervous energy between them. As Leo drove home, the empty passenger seat beside him felt different. It felt promising. The cafe date was not a disaster, but it was a symphony of quiet awkwardness. They were both hyper-aware that this was an asterisk date, a concept that seemed to suck the easy camaraderie from the air. The conversations stumbled. They talked about the weather, the market, knitting, engineering, safe, shallow topics. The silences were heavy. After an hour, Evelyn looked at her hands. "I should probably get going. I have some orders to finish." "Of course," Leo said, trying to hide his disappointment. "It was nice." "It was," she agreed, but neither of them sounded convinced. He walked her to her car, a beat-up sedan, and they said a stiff goodbye. Driving home, Leo felt a crushing sense of defeat. He'd ruined it. He'd taken a simple, beautiful Saturday morning friendship and tried to force it into a different shape, and now he'd lost it. The quiet of the house that night was louder than ever. He didn't text her, she didn't text him. The following Saturday loomed like a cliff edge. When Saturday came, Leo considered not going to the market, but Chloe was expecting it. It was their tradition. He couldn't break it because of his own stupid misstep. The entire drive, Chloe chattered, unaware of the knot in her father's stomach. When they entered the pavilion, Leo couldn't bring himself to look toward Evelyn's stall. He kept his focus on Chloe, on the list, on the apples. But Chloe had no such reservations. 10 minutes in, she tugged his hand. "Daddy, there's Evelyn, let's go say hi." Before he could protest, she was pulling him forward. He had no choice but to follow, his heart hammering. Evelyn was helping another customer. She glanced up, saw them, and for a terrifying second, her expression was unreadable. Then she finished with the customer and turned to them. "Hi," she said, her voice neutral. "Hi," Leo replied, the words sticking in his throat. Chloe, blissfully oblivious, launched into a story about her week. Evelyn listened, nodding, smiling at the right places, but her eyes kept flicking to Leo, wary and unsure. After a few minutes, the silence between the adults became palpable. Chloe finally sensed it. "Aren't we having cider today?" Evelyn took a deep breath. "Leo, can we talk, just for a minute?" He nodded, his mouth dry. "Chloe, sweetheart, can you look at those sparkly hair clips at the next stall for a second? I'll be right here." Once Chloe was distracted, Evelyn folded her arms, not looking at him. "Last Sunday was awkward." "It was," he admitted. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have pushed." "No," she interrupted. "It's not your fault. It's mine. I'm not good at that, at dating, at making conversation when the stakes feel high. I went home and felt like I'd completely messed up something that was really important to me." The confession stunned him. Important. She finally met his eyes, and he saw the same vulnerability that had been there when she'd first handed him the scarf. "These Saturdays, they've become the highlight of my week, you and Chloe, and I was so scared that by trying to make it something else, we'd lose what it already was. And after last Sunday, I thought we had." Leo felt a surge of relief so strong it made him lightheaded. "I thought the exact same thing. I thought I'd ruined everything." A tentative smile touched her lips. "So, what are we doing?" "I don't know," he said honestly, "but I know I don't want to stop having cider with you on Saturdays, however that looks." "Me either," she said. Just then, Chloe returned, holding 2 sparkly clips. "Can I get these, Daddy, please?" The moment passed, but the tension had broken. They got their ciders and stood by the fire pit. The conversation wasn't as easy as before the failed date, but it was trying. It was rebuilding. And as they talked, Leo realized something fundamental had changed. Before, Evelyn had been a kind, interesting woman he saw at the market. Now she was a person he had hurt and been hurt by, however slightly. They had stumbled and were choosing to find their footing again. That process, that deliberate choice, felt more significant than any perfectly smooth first date could ever be. Weeks turned to months. Winter tightened its grip, then slowly began to loosen. The Saturday meetings became non-negotiable fixtures. Evelyn started joining them for brief periods on Sunday afternoons after Chloe's handoff to Claire for walks in the park. She came to Chloe's kindergarten art show. Leo helped her build a sturdier display for her market stall. They were, in every practical sense, a couple, but they had not defined it, had not put a label on the fragile, beautiful thing they were building. The fear was still there, a silent partner in every moment of happiness, the fear of moving too fast, of confusing Chloe, of the complicated reality of blending a life with a single father. The unspoken question hung between them, what is this? And more terrifyingly, where is it going? The answer, when it came, did not come from either of them. It came from Chloe. It was a warm Saturday in April. The market was bursting with the first spring seedlings and bunches of tulips. Chloe, now 6, was swinging between Leo and Evelyn's hands as they walked. They had just left Evelyn's stall and were heading for their cider. Out of nowhere, Chloe looked up at Evelyn, her small face serious. Evelyn. Yes, sweetheart. Are you going to be my new mommy? The question dropped into the moment like a stone into a still pond. Leo felt Evelyn's hand stiffen in his own breath caught. The world seemed to narrow to the three of them, standing there amidst the cheerful crowd. Evelyn's eyes were wide, filled with a tidal wave of emotion, shock, tenderness, and sheer panic. She looked to Leo, desperate for guidance, but he was frozen, completely unprepared. Chloe, innocent of the earthquake she had just caused, simply waited for an answer, her trusting gaze fixed on the woman who had knit her a scarf, who had listened to her stories, who had become her favorite part of Saturday. Evelyn opened her mouth, but no sound came out. The words, the perfect, gentle words a child needed, were trapped somewhere beneath the weight of the real, complicated, terrifying answer. The silence that followed Chloe's question was the loudest sound Leo had ever heard. He watched as Evelyn's face cycled through a lifetime of emotions in 3 seconds: shock, a flash of profound joy, then a crushing wave of fear. Her hand, still linked with his, went cold. The bustling market around them seemed to fade into a distant murmur. Leo's own mind was a white noise of panic. How do I fix this? What do I say? Every parenting book, every article on blending families evaporated from his memory. He was just a man staring at the wreckage of a perfect moment caused by the most innocent of bombshells. Evelyn knelt down slowly, her movements careful, until she was at Chloe's eye level. She didn't look at Leo for permission or rescue. She focused entirely on the little girl. That is the most important question anyone has ever asked me, Evelyn said, her voice thick but clear. She reached out and gently touched the Frostbury scarf, still wrapped around Chloe's neck. And the answer is, I would be so lucky to be anything that makes you feel safe and loved. But I could never replace your mommy. She's your mommy, and that's special forever. I'm your Evelyn, if that's okay. Chloe considered this, her small brow furrowed. So you're not my new mommy? No, sweetheart, I'm not. But you come on Saturdays, and you make me things, and you make Daddy smile. Chloe stated these as simple facts, a child's proof of concept. Evelyn's eyes welled up. I do those things because I love being with you, both of you. Being your Evelyn is my favorite thing to be. It was a breathtaking piece of emotional diplomacy, honest, gentle, and it placed the power back in Chloe's hands. The little girl seemed to accept this new category, your Evelyn. She nodded, satisfied for now, and pointed to a balloon vendor. Can I get a balloon? The crisis was averted, but the earthquake had happened. The ground beneath their feet was fundamentally different. The rest of the market trip was a polite pantomime. They got the balloon, they got their cider, but the easy comfort was gone, replaced by a strained carefulness. When they said goodbye to Evelyn, the hug she gave Chloe was a fraction tighter, a second longer. In the car driving home, Chloe was her usual chatty self, seemingly unaffected. Leo's mind, however, was racing down dark tunnels. That question didn't come from nowhere. It came from a child who was starting to want to hope for a unified picture. She was assembling a puzzle, and she was trying to figure out where Evelyn's piece fit. The problem was, Leo didn't have the box with the picture on it. He was building this puzzle in the dark. He knew he had to talk to Claire. The thought filled him with dread. Discussing Evelyn had always been a surface-level report. Asterisk Chloe had a nice time. She got a knitted headband, asterisk. This was different. This was acknowledging that Evelyn's role was evolving into something substantive, something that prompted a child to ask about motherhood. He waited until Chloe was in bed that night, the new balloon tied to her bedpost. He paced the living room, rehearsing lines that all sounded wrong. Finally, he just picked up the phone and called. Claire answered on the third ring, her voice bright. She'd been out with friends. Leo, everything okay with Chloe? Yeah, she's fine, she's asleep. I need to talk to you about something, about Evelyn. The brightness on the other end dimmed. Okay, what's going on? Leo took a breath and told her. About the scarf, the growing Saturday ritual, the failed coffee date and the recovery, the walks in the park. He didn't romanticize it, he presented it as facts. And then, his voice barely above a whisper, he told her about Chloe's question. There was a long, heavy silence on the line. He could practically hear Claire's lawyer brain engaging, shifting from ex-wife to protective co-parent. She asked if Evelyn was going to be her new mommy, Claire repeated, her voice neutral in a way that was more frightening than anger. Yes. And what did Evelyn say? Leo relayed Evelyn's response verbatim. He heard Claire let out a slow, controlled breath. It's a good answer, Claire said finally, and Leo felt a surge of relief. It's a really good, thoughtful answer. She didn't overpromise, she didn't dismiss it. Another pause. But Leo, this is a big deal. This isn't just a nice lady at the market anymore. Chloe is attaching. She's assigning a role. We need to be incredibly careful here. I know, I am being careful. Are you? The question wasn't accusatory, but probing. What are your intentions with this woman? Is this serious? The directness pinned him to the wall. He'd been avoiding asking himself the same question. I think it could be. It feels serious. But my intention, first and foremost, is Chloe's stability, always. I believe that, Claire said, but could be and is are different worlds, and Chloe lives in the is. She doesn't understand could be. If this is getting serious, I need to meet her, properly, not just a wave at the market. It was a reasonable request. It was also terrifying. Okay, Leo said, I can arrange that. Good, and Leo, Claire's voice softened a fraction. I'm glad you told me. Please keep telling me. We're a team on this, even if we're not a team on anything else. The call ended, leaving Leo emotionally spent. He had crossed a threshold. By informing Claire, he had officially moved Evelyn from the category of his private life to a factor in their co-parenting agreement. It was necessary, but it made everything feel more precarious, more subject to evaluation. The next Saturday at the market was shadowed by the upcoming meeting. He'd asked Evelyn if she would be willing to have coffee with him and Claire next week. The panic that flashed in her eyes was immediate. She wants to vet me, Evelyn said, her voice small. She wants to meet the person who's important to her daughter, Leo corrected gently, though they both knew it was a distinction without a difference. It's a good thing. It means she's taking this seriously. What if she hates me? She won't hate you. You can't know that. He couldn't, but they had to do it. The meeting was set for Tuesday evening at a quiet, upscale cafe downtown, Claire's territory. Evelyn was quiet on the drive over, her hands knotted in her lap. She'd worn a simple sweater and jeans, but had agonized over the choice for hours. I don't want to look like I'm trying too hard, but I don't want to look like I don't care, she'd confessed. Claire was already there, at a corner table, looking polished and professional. She stood as they approached, her smile polite and unreadable. Claire, this is Evelyn, Evelyn Claire. It's so nice to finally meet you, Claire said, extending her hand. Chloe talks about you constantly. "It's nice to meet you too," Evelyn said, her handshake brief. "She's an amazing kid. You've done an incredible job." It was the perfect first volley, a compliment that acknowledged Claire's primacy. Leo felt a flicker of hope. They sat. The conversation was, by design, all about Chloe, her school, her friends, her love of the scarf. It was safe ground. Claire was warm, but Leo could see the assessment happening behind her eyes. She was noting how Evelyn spoke about Chloe with genuine affection, not performative sweetness. She was noting how Evelyn listened, how she deferred to Claire's knowledge of their daughter's allergies, her habits. After 20 minutes of this, Claire took a sip of her tea and shifted gears almost imperceptibly. "So Evelyn, Leo tells me you're a knitter. You have your own business." Evelyn nodded, launching into a description of her market stall, her online shop. She spoke about the financial precarity of it with a frankness that surprised Leo. She didn't try to make it sound more successful than it was. "It's a passion, but it's a hustle," Evelyn concluded. "Some months are great. January is always scary." Claire nodded. "It's brave to build something like that. What did you do before?" And there it was, the unspoken question underneath the spoken one. What is your foundation? What is your stability? Evelyn's story came out in pieces. She'd studied textile design, worked for a small clothing brand that went under, had been a freelance graphic designer for a while, but hated the isolation. Knitting had started as therapy, then turned into a livelihood. It was a patchwork history, not a linear career path. To Leo, it spoke of resilience and creativity. He could see Claire filing it under different category, unstable, unconventional asterisk. The meeting ended with more pleasantries, a promise to coordinate for Chloe's upcoming school play. In the car afterwards, Evelyn was silent for a full 5 minutes. "She thinks I'm not good enough," Evelyn said finally, staring out the window. "That's not true. She was perfectly nice." "She was perfectly polite," Evelyn corrected. "There's a difference. I saw how she looked at me when I talked about my income. I'm a hobbyist with a stall, you're an engineer, she's a successful designer. I don't fit the profile." "There is no profile," Leo insisted, but it felt hollow. Because there was a profile, an unspoken one for a person being considered as a potential step-parent, and it involved stability, predictability, assets. Things Evelyn, in her beautiful, handmade, precarious world, couldn't easily check off. The seed of doubt, planted by Chloe's question and watered by Claire's polite scrutiny, began to sprout in Evelyn's mind. She started pulling back, not dramatically, but in a dozen small ways. She was too busy with orders to come for a Sunday walk. She cut their Saturday cider short. Her texts became less frequent, more practical. Leo felt her slipping away, retreating behind the wall she'd so carefully lowered. He knew why. She was protecting herself. To hope for this, for a man, for a child, for a family, was to risk a shattering loss. And Evelyn, whose entire life was built on the quiet, careful work of putting small, beautiful things together, was terrified of anything that could break. The breaking point came from an unexpected direction. It was a Wednesday, Leo's midweek dinner night with Chloe. They were at his house, making pizza, when Chloe, sprinkling cheese with intense concentration, said, "I told Mom about the mommy question." Leo's blood ran cold. "You did? What did she say?" "She said it was a very big question, and she asked me lots of questions about Evelyn." "What kind of questions?" "Like, do I feel safe with her? Do I like her? What do we do together?" Chloe shrugged, as if it were a normal quiz. "I said yes, and we do lots of stuff." And then she asked if Evelyn ever seems sad or scary. The last question felt like a punch. It was a standard, responsible thing for a parent to ask about a new adult in their child's life. But to Leo, in that moment, it felt like an interrogation, a search for flaws. He knew Claire was just doing her job, but the thought of Chloe being subtly questioned about Evelyn's fitness made him angry. "What did you say?" he asked, keeping his voice even. "I said she's not scary. Sometimes she's a little sad, like when she talks about missing her grandma who taught her to knit. But then she smiles again." That night, after taking Chloe back to Claire, Leo couldn't shake his anger. It wasn't fair. Evelyn was the most gentle, kind-hearted person he'd ever met, She brought nothing but joy into their lives, and now she was being subjected to a background check via a 6-year-old. He called Claire, the questions you asked Chloe about Evelyn that felt intense. Claire's tone was defensive. I'm her mother, Leo. It's my job to assess the adults she spends significant time with. Would you prefer I didn't care? Of course not, but there's a way to do it. You're making it into a thing, and now Chloe is picking up on that. She told Evelyn she asked if Evelyn was scary. A beat of silence. I didn't mean for it to sound like that. I was trying to gauge her comfort level. Well, you've gauged it. Evelyn is pulling away because she feels judged, and I'm losing something really good because of this. If she's pulling away that easily, maybe she's not as invested as you think, Claire said, and the words were like a knife. The call devolved into their first real argument in months. Old hurts resurfaced, Claire's accusation that Leo was naive, Leo's accusation that Claire was controlling. They were no longer talking about Evelyn, they were fighting the same battles that had ended their marriage. Leo hung up, exhausted and heartsick. He drove to Evelyn's apartment without calling first. He needed to see her. She answered the door, surprised, her eyes red-rimmed. She'd been crying. She let him in without a word. Her small living room was dominated by a large knitting basket, half-finished projects spilling out like colorful entrails. Claire and I just fought, Leo said, collapsing onto her sofa. About you, about the questions she asked Chloe. Evelyn sat in a chair opposite him, pulling her knees to her chest. Chloe told me tonight, when you were getting the pizza out of the oven, she whispered it like it was a secret. My mom asked if you were scary. Evelyn wrapped her arms around her legs. I know she has to ask, I know that, but it made me feel like a suspect, like I have to prove I'm not a monster to be allowed to love you both. You don't have to prove anything, Leo said, but the words sounded weak. I do, Leo, don't you see? I'm the variable, the new element in the carefully balanced equation of your lives. I'm the one who has to be vetted, approved, and found stable enough. And I look at my life, my tiny business, my tiny apartment, my quiet, messy history, and I don't see stability. I see someone trying to make ends meet with yarn. I'm not Claire. I don't have a career, a condo, a 5-year plan. I have a stubborn hope and a pile of wool. She was crying in earnest now, silent tears streaming down her face. I love Chloe. I love her so much it terrifies me. And I'm falling in love with you, but loving you comes with a manual I haven't read. It comes with custody schedules and co-parenting negotiations and making sure I don't step on the toes of a woman who will always, rightfully, be more important than I am. It's the most beautiful, complicated thing I've ever stumbled into, and I am so scared I'm going to break it. Or that I'm already breaking it just by being here. For the first time, Leo saw the full weight of what she was carrying. It wasn't just shyness. It was the profound fear of the outsider, the third wheel in a pre-existing family system. Her love for them was bumping up against the hard, institutional realities of divorce and parenting. He moved from the sofa to the floor in front of her chair, taking her hands. You are not breaking it. You are the thing that's putting it back together. You think I don't see stability? I'm an engineer. I know what makes a structure strong. It's not the fancy materials. It's integrity, it's resilience. It's the ability to bear weight without collapsing. You have all of that. You've built a life from scratch with your own hands. You survived a failed coffee date with me. You handled a 6-year-old's existential question with more grace than I could have ever managed. You are the strongest person I know. Evelyn looked down at him, her expression raw. What are we doing, Leo? What is this? He took a deep breath. The time for ambiguity was over. The earthquake demanded new foundations. This is me asking you to be my girlfriend, officially, with all the messy, complicated, scary parts that come with me and my daughter. This is me choosing you and asking you to choose this messy life with us. She searched his face, looking for any hint of doubt. Finding none, she let out a shuddering breath and nodded. Okay, yes, I choose you, I choose the mess. They held each other on the floor of her apartment, two people clinging to a decision made in the eye of a storm. It felt less like a romantic beginning and more like a treaty, a mutual agreement to face the complications together. For a few weeks, there was a renewed peace. The official label gave them a new confidence. Evelyn stopped pulling away. She started coming to Wednesday dinners regularly. She and Claire exchanged polite, slightly stiff texts about Chloe's schedule. But the underlying tension hadn't disappeared. It had just changed form. It was now a tension of integration. Where did Evelyn fit during parent-teacher conferences, on Christmas morning, in family medical decisions? They were navigating uncharted territory without a map. The real test came with Chloe's 7th birthday party. Claire was hosting a big party at a children's gym on a Saturday afternoon. It was Claire's event, on her custody time. Leo was, of course, invited. The night before the party, Claire called, "So, is Evelyn coming tomorrow?" The question was neutral, but Leo heard the unspoken text. Is this a family event or a parent event? I hadn't asked her. I didn't know if that was appropriate, Leo admitted. Chloe asked if she could come, Claire said. She wants to show Evelyn the gym, so if you want to bring her, it's fine, just be prepared. My parents will be there, my sister. It was a minefield, bringing Evelyn to a party hosted by his ex-wife, surrounded by her family, but Chloe wanted her there. How could he say no? He asked Evelyn, framing it carefully. Chloe would love you to be there, but it's Claire's party. Her family will be there. It might be awkward. You can absolutely say no. Evelyn was quiet for a long moment. If Chloe wants me there, I'll be there. I'm not going to hide. So the next day, Leo walked into the chaotic, shrieking echo chamber of the children's gym with Evelyn by his side. He immediately spotted Claire's parents across the room, his former in-laws. They had never been unkind to him after the divorce, but there was a permanent coolness there, a sense of disappointment. He saw the moment they noticed Evelyn, a whispered conversation, a series of glances. Claire came over, a forced smile on her face. "You made it. Hi Evelyn, thanks for coming." "Thanks for having me," Evelyn said, holding out a wrapped gift. "I made Chloe something." Chloe came rocketing over then, in a tutu and a birthday crown, and threw her arms around Evelyn's waist. "You came, come see the foam pit." For an hour, Evelyn navigated the event with quiet grace. She helped with party games, she took pictures of Chloe, she made small talk with Claire's sister. But Leo could feel the invisible lines being drawn. He was with Chloe and Evelyn in one corner. Claire was with her family and friends in another. They were two separate islands at the same party. During pizza time, Claire's mother approached Leo while he was getting a drink. "She seems nice," she said, her tone implying a but that never came. "She is," Leo said firmly. "Chloe certainly adores her. It's just very fast, isn't it?" "It's been almost a year, Margaret." "A year is nothing in a child's life," she said softly, not unkindly, and walked away. Her words burrowed under his skin. A year is nothing. Was he moving too fast? Was he, in his loneliness, prioritizing his own happiness over Chloe's long-term security? The party ended with cake and goodie bags. As they were leaving, Chloe was buzzing with sugar and joy, holding both Leo and Evelyn's hands. Claire came to the door to see them out. "Bye, birthday girl. I'll see you tomorrow for our special day," Claire said, giving Chloe a hug. Then she straightened up and looked at Leo and Evelyn. "Drive safe." Her eyes lingered on their joined hands with Chloe, and for a fraction of a second, her polite smile faltered, revealing a flash of pure, unguarded pain. It was gone in an instant, replaced by the mask of cheerful hostess, but Leo had seen it. In that flash, he understood the true cost of this new happiness. It wasn't just about logistics or stability. His moving on, his building a new family picture with someone else, was a constant, living reminder to Claire of their failure, and her polite acceptance was a daily act of grace that had to hurt. In the car, Evelyn was quiet. "That was hard," she said finally. "For her, I saw her face when we were leaving." "I saw it too," Leo said. "I don't want to be the source of anyone's pain." "You're not," Leo said, but he wasn't sure he believed it anymore. Maybe happiness in a broken system was always a zero-sum game. Maybe his gain was inevitably someone else's loss. That night, after dropping Evelyn off, Leo got a text from Claire. It was just 2 words, "She's lovely." It was the final stamp of approval, the official blessing, and it felt like a death sentence for the last, faint hope that this could all be simple, because now there were no obstacles left, no one to blame. The path was clear. The only thing standing between them and a future was their own terrifying, magnificent, fragile choice to walk it. And that's when the letter arrived. It wasn't a bill or junk mail. It was a thick, cream-colored envelope addressed to Evelyn in elegant, unfamiliar handwriting. It had been forwarded from her old apartment, the one she'd left 6 months ago when her lease skyrocketed. It had taken its time finding her. She opened it at Leo's kitchen table one Tuesday evening while he washed dishes from their dinner. He heard the sharp intake of breath, the rustle of paper falling. He turned, drying his hands. Evelyn was staring at the letter, her face bone-white. "What is it?" Leo asked, crossing the room. She didn't answer. She just handed him the single sheet of heavy stationery. The letterhead was from a law firm he didn't recognize. The body of the text was concise, legal, and utterly devastating. It was from the executor of her grandmother's estate. Her grandmother, the woman who had taught her to knit, who had been her anchor after her own parents passed, had died 8 months ago. Evelyn knew this. She'd grieved privately, the loss another quiet stone in her pocket, but the letter wasn't about condolences. It was about a bequest. Her grandmother had left her a small sum of money, not life-changing, but significant, enough to erase her debt, enough to secure a proper studio space for her business for a year, enough to breathe. The catch, and there was always a catch, was the condition. The money was to be used for the establishment of a stable foundation for her future. The executor needed a plan, a business plan, a budget, proof of enrollment in a course, something concrete. They needed to see stability before they would release the funds. The irony was exquisite and cruel. The very thing Claire had subtly questioned, the very insecurity that had made Evelyn pull away, was now being monetized and held hostage by a dead woman's well-intentioned wish. To get the help she desperately needed, she had to prove she was already the stable, secure person she feared she was. "This is a joke," Evelyn whispered, her voice hollow. "She loved me, she knew me, why would she do this?" Leo scanned the letter again. "She's trying to help. She probably thought it would give you a push." "A push, it feels like an audit." Evelyn put her head in her hands. "I have to present my life to a stranger and convince them it's worth investing in. How is that different from what I've been trying to do with Claire, with you?" "It's not an audition, Ev. It's just paperwork." "It's asterisk-proof asterisk," she said, looking up, her eyes fierce with hurt. "And I don't have any. My business plan is in my head. My budget is don't spend money. My stability is," she gestured around his kitchen at their half-finished meal. "It's this, it's you, and I can't put that in a spreadsheet for a lawyer." The letter became a ghost in the room. It sat on the counter, a physical manifestation of every doubt Evelyn had ever voiced. She became obsessed with it. She spent nights drafting and redrafting business plans, her knitting abandoned. The joyful creativity that defined her was replaced by a grinding, anxious productivity. She talked about cash flow projections instead of new color patterns. Leo tried to help. He used his engineering mind to help her structure a plan, create realistic budgets, but his help felt like pressure. Every spreadsheet cell he filled felt to her like a judgment, a quantification of her worth. "You're so good at this," she said one night, watching him format a table. "It's just another problem to solve for you. For me, it's my entire soul being graded." He stopped, strung. "I'm trying to support you." "I know," she said, exhausted, "but your support looks a lot like fixing me, and I'm not a problem, Leo. I'm just a person who's messy." The fissure between them, born from external pressure, was now widening from within. They were speaking different languages. He spoke the language of solutions. She was speaking the language of survival. Then the second envelope arrived. This one was addressed to Leo. It was from the same law firm. His heart dropped. Why would they be writing to him? He opened it with Evelyn watching, her face a mask of dread. It was a letter of inquiry. As the executor understood, Mr. Leo was in a serious domestic partnership with Ms. Evelyn. They were seeking a brief character reference regarding her reliability and long-term stability. They assured him this was a standard step when a beneficiary's personal circumstances had recently changed. Evelyn made a small, wounded sound. They're vetting you too to see if you're a stable influence or if you're another risk. Leo was furious. It was an outrageous overreach. I'm not answering this. This is none of their business. You have to, Evelyn said, her voice quiet and defeated. If you don't, it looks like you have something to hide or that you won't vouch for me. It's another test, and we're both taking it. So Leo sat down to write a character reference for the woman he loved, to be judged by a stranger determining her financial worth. The words felt dirty on the page. Every compliment felt like it was being given under oath. She is kind. She is resilient. She is wonderful with my daughter. It was all true, but writing it for this purpose made the truth feel cheap. He mailed it, feeling like he'd participated in something degrading. The strain began to show in their time with Chloe. Evelyn was distracted, her smiles forced. Chloe, perceptive as ever, picked up on it. Are you and Evelyn fighting? She asked Leo one night during bedtime stories. No, sweetheart, she just has a lot on her mind with her work. Is she going to go away? The fear in Chloe's voice was immediate and heartbreaking. No, she's not going away. But he was less sure than he sounded. The foundation they'd built on cider Saturdays and park walks and whispered confessions was cracking under the weight of institutional validation. They needed a win, a pure, simple moment of joy. He decided to create one. He planned a weekend trip, just the three of them, a cabin in the woods 2 hours north for Chloe's spring break. No market, no letters, no co-parenting schedules, just them. He presented it to Evelyn as a done deal, wanting to surprise her. I booked a cabin this weekend. We need to hit pause on all of this and just remember who we are. For a moment, he saw the old Evelyn flicker back, the one who found joy in simple things. Her eyes lit up. Really? A cabin? Really? Fireplace? No cell service? Hiking trails? The whole deal? She threw her arms around him, and for the first time in weeks, the hug felt unburdened. Thank you, I need this, we need this. He told Claire, who agreed easily, though her tone was careful. A whole weekend away, that's a big step. It's just a trip, Cleo. I know, have fun. The first day at the cabin was magic. The air was crisp and pine-scented. Chloe chased butterflies. Evelyn laughed, a real, deep laugh, as they attempted to build a fire. They roasted marshmallows. They told silly stories. That night, with Chloe asleep in the loft, Leo and Evelyn sat by the dying fire. This is what I want, Evelyn said, her head on his shoulder. Just this, the quiet, the simplicity, no one watching, no one judging. This is what we can have, Leo said, believing it. We just have to get through this legal nonsense. It's just a hurdle. She was quiet for a long time. What if I don't get the money, Leo? Then we figure it out, together. Your worth isn't in that bank account. It feels like it is, she whispered, to everyone but you. The second day, the illusion shattered. They decided to hike to a nearby waterfall. The trail was steeper than expected, muddy from spring runoff. Evelyn, determined to keep up, pushed herself hard. Halfway up, her prosthetic leg slipped on a wet root. She fell hard, not just stumbling, but crashing down onto the muddy path with a cry that was more shock than pain. Leo was at her side in an instant. Are you okay? Did you hurt your leg? She was already scrambling to get up, her face a mask of humiliation. I'm fine, let's just keep going. But she wasn't fine. She'd wrenched her back, and the fall had damaged the hydraulic mechanism in her prosthetic. It now emitted a faint, clicking sound with each step, a mechanical whine of defeat. The rest of the hike was a silent, painful ordeal. Evelyn limped, the click-clack of her leg a brutal metronome marking their ruined day. Chloe, sensing the mood, stopped chattering. The beautiful, remote waterfall, when they finally reached it, was just a cold, loud place where they ate granola bars in strained silence. The drive home was worse. The clicking leg was a constant reminder in the closed car. Evelyn stared out the window, utterly withdrawn. The weekend meant to heal them had instead highlighted her deepest vulnerability, her physical difference, and the ways it could make her a burden. When they got back to Leo's house, Evelyn went straight to the bathroom. Leo got Chloe settled with a movie. When Evelyn emerged, her eyes were red, but her voice was steady, frighteningly so. "I need to go home," she said. "I need to take my leg to the prosthetist tomorrow, and I need to think." "Ev, don't do this. Don't pull away because of a fall. It was an accident." "Wasn't just a fall, Leo." The words erupted from her, sharp and broken. "It was a preview. It was a preview of what a life with me looks like. Cancelled hikes, expensive repairs, limitations. You want to go on a spontaneous trip? Better check if the terrain is Evelyn approved. You want a future? Factor in the cost of new prosthetics every few years. Factor in the days I can't get out of bed because my back hurts from walking wrong. I'm not just a person, Leo. I am a logistical challenge, and after this weekend, I don't have the energy to pretend otherwise." He was stunned by the venom, by the depth of her self-loathing. "I don't see you that way. Chloe doesn't see you that way. Chloe is a child. She sees magic scarves and kindness. She doesn't see the receipts, the doctor's appointments, the limitations asterisk." Evelyn grabbed her bag, her movements stiff with pain and anger. "I need to be alone, please." He didn't stop her. He watched her go, the click of her faulty leg echoing in the hallway, a sound he knew he would hear in his nightmares. The withdrawal this time was total. She didn't answer his calls. Her texts were one-word replies. She cancelled their next Saturday, citing her prosthesis appointment. Leo was paralyzed. He couldn't fix this with a spreadsheet or a planned trip. He couldn't fix the reality of her body or the shame that had attached itself to it. A week after the cabin disaster, the third letter came. This one was for Evelyn, but she was ignoring her mail. Leo, worried it was another legal grenade, took it to her apartment. He knocked for 5 minutes before she finally opened the door. She looked exhausted, pale, but the mechanical click was gone. Her leg was repaired. "This came," he said, holding out the envelope. She took it without a word, opened it, and read. Then, silently, she handed it back to him. It was from the executor. After review of her submitted materials and the character reference, they were pleased to inform her that the bequest was approved. The funds would be transferred within 10 business days. Congratulations were offered. She had won, she had passed the test. She had her stability handed to her on expensive paper. Evelyn walked to her sofa and sat down, staring at the wall. There was no joy, no relief, just a profound, empty exhaustion. "This is what it took," she said, her voice flat. "I had to quantify my dreams, have my boyfriend write me a recommendation, and prove my worth to a dead woman's lawyer to get the help my own grandmother wanted to give me. And you know what the worst part is? I would have failed if you weren't in the picture. Your reference, your stability, is what tipped the scales. I didn't earn this. You lent me your credibility." Leo sat beside her. "That's not true. Your work, your talent, that's what they saw. They saw a risk that was mitigated by my association with a stable engineer." She turned to look at him, her eyes clear and terribly sad. "Don't you see, Leo? This whole thing has been a magnifying glass on everything I'm not. And I can't be in a relationship where my value is constantly being appraised. By Claire, by a lawyer, by my own grandmother's ghost. And especially not by you, even though you don't mean to do it. Every time you try to help, it feels like you're building a case for me, and I'm so tired of being a case." He finally understood. This wasn't about the money, or the fall, or Claire. This was about a woman who had spent a lifetime feeling like she was on the outside looking in, and who now believed that love itself came with a judgmental panel. She was rejecting the entire system, and that included him, because he was part of the architecture. "What are you saying?" he asked, his heart a cold, hard stone in his chest. "I'm saying I need to figure out who I am without anyone's approval, including yours. I need to take this money, build something that's truly mine, and know that I did it without being someone's charity project or someone's stable girlfriend. I can't do that while I'm trying to fit into the life you and Chloe need me to fit into. It's breaking me." It was the most articulate, devastating breakup he had ever experienced. There was no anger, no blame placed on him. It was all turned inward, a total surrender. "So that's it?" he asked, his voice cracking. "After everything?" Evelyn reached out and took his hand, her touch cold. "I love you, Leo. I love Chloe. That's why I have to go, because loving you right now means contorting myself into a shape that will eventually destroy me, and then I'll be no good to anyone." She let go of his hand. The finality in the gesture was absolute. Leo left her apartment in a daze. The world had lost its color. He drove home to the house that was once again just a house, not a home waiting to be built. He had lost her, not to a rival, not to a fight, but to the crushing weight of the very stability he was supposed to represent. He had one thought, a selfish, guilty thought that shamed him even as it consumed him. He had to tell Chloe, and that he knew would be the hardest thing he had ever done. Telling Chloe was a kind of surgery, performed without anesthetic. He waited until the next morning when she was well rested and eating cereal at the kitchen island, her feet swinging. He sat beside her, his throat already closing. "Sweetheart, I need to talk to you about Evelyn." Chloe stopped chewing, her spoon halfway to her mouth. She looked at him with those ancient, perceptive eyes. "She's gone, isn't she?" The fact that she'd jumped straight to the conclusion broke him. For now, yes, she needs some time to herself. "Because of the clicky leg?" Chloe asked, her voice small. "No, baby, not because of that. Because grown-ups sometimes get very sad and confused inside, and they need to be alone to figure things out. It has nothing to do with you. She loves you so much." Chloe put her spoon down carefully. A single tear rolled down her cheek, then another. She didn't wail or scream. She just sat there, letting the tears fall silently into her cereal bowl. It was a grief too deep for 6-year-old theatrics. "Will she come back?" "I don't know," Leo said, because he couldn't lie to her about this. "But we have to be okay even if she doesn't." That was the hardest part. He had to model a stability he didn't feel. He had to get up every morning, make breakfast, go to work, and pretend his heart wasn't a hollowed-out shell. For Chloe, he had to perform resilience. The first Saturday without Evelyn was a ghost limb of a day. They went to the market out of habit. The pavilion felt cavernous. Leo's eyes went automatically to the far end, to her stall. It was occupied by a different vendor now, a man selling leather belts. Evelyn's colorful, knitted world was gone, erased as if it had never existed. Chloe saw it too. She didn't say anything, just tightened her grip on his hand. They did their shopping in silence. They didn't buy cider. The ritual was broken, and without it, the market was just a crowded place with overpriced vegetables. Leo threw himself into work. He took on extra projects, stayed late at the office. The house was too quiet, so he filled it with noise, podcasts, music, the television murmuring in the background. He stopped going to the park on Sundays. Everywhere he went, he saw echoes of her. Claire, to her credit, was gentle. She didn't say, "I told you so." She saw Chloe's subdued mood and stepped in with extra mom-daughter dates, with distractions. One evening, when she dropped Chloe off, she lingered at the door. "How are you holding up?" she asked, and for the first time in years, it felt like she was asking her friend, not her co-parent. "I'm functional," Leo said. "That's all you have to be right now," she hesitated. "For what it's worth, I'm sorry, I liked her, she was good for you both." Her words were a kindness he hadn't expected, and it almost undid him. Meanwhile, Evelyn was building her foundation. With the inherited money, she rented a small, bright studio space in an arts collective downtown. She bought professional-grade equipment. She launched a proper website. She was quoted in a local magazine article about women artisans. Leo saw it online. Her picture showed her smiling, but her eyes had a determined, steely quality he didn't recognize. She was building the stability she'd been asked to prove. She was doing it alone. Months bled into a year. Chloe turned 7, then 8. The Frostbury scarf was packed away in a memory box. She'd outgrown it. The word Evelyn was mentioned less and less, until it wasn't mentioned at all. She became a bittersweet ghost in their past, a story that began with a scarf and ended with a silence. Leo dated a few nice, smart women who didn't understand why he flinched at the sight of a knitting store or why he couldn't bring himself to go to the farmer's market anymore. They didn't last. He convinced himself this was his life now, a good life even. He was a present father. He had a career. He had his health. He told himself that was enough, that the deep, aching want for something more, for a partner, for a completed family picture, was a luxury, a childish dream. He built a fortress of contentment around his heart and called it peace. Then, on a brisk Saturday in October, 2 years after the breakup, Chloe made a request. "Can we go to the art fair downtown?" Jenny from school went and said there's a booth that makes custom stuffed animals. Leo hesitated. The art fair was exactly the kind of event Evelyn would have loved, but it had been 2 years. The wound was a scar, not an open cut. "Sure," he said, "let's go." The fair was in a converted warehouse, bustling and vibrant. They wandered through aisles of paintings, pottery, jewelry. Chloe led him to the stuffed animal booth, enchanted. As she deliberated over what creature to have made, Leo let his gaze drift. And then he saw her. Evelyn. She had a booth 3 aisles over. It was larger than her market stall, professional and beautiful. A tasteful sign read, "Evelyn Collins Textiles." Her display was a masterpiece of texture and color: chunky knit blankets, delicate lace shawls, scarves that looked like watercolor paintings. And there, in a place of honor at the front, was a small collection of children's items, including a tiny, frostberry-colored scarf with embroidered snowflakes. She was helping a customer, her back to him. She'd cut her hair shorter. She stood confidently, no trace of the shy woman who'd once trembled handing a gift to a stranger. She looked solid, realized. Leo's heart hammered against his ribs. He felt dizzy. Part of him wanted to grab Chloe and run. Another part was rooted to the spot. Chloe, having placed her order, followed his gaze. She went very still. "Daddy, is that?" "Yeah," he breathed. "It is." They stood there, two statues in a river of moving people, watching Evelyn work. She finished with the customer, turned, and her eyes swept the aisle. They passed over him, then snapped back. Time stopped. Her expression went through a lifetime in 3 seconds: shock, panic, a flood of sadness, and then, finally, a slow, tentative softening. She didn't smile, but she didn't look away. Leo felt Chloe's small hand slip into his, squeezing tight. He looked down at her. Her face was a mask of conflict, curiosity, old hurt, and a faint, flickering hope. "Do you want to say hi?" he asked her softly. Chloe bit her lip, thinking hard. Then she nodded. "Yes." They walked toward the booth, each step feeling monumental. As they approached, Evelyn came out from behind the table to meet them. She stopped a few feet away, a respectful distance. "Hi," she said, her voice exactly the same, yet completely different, calmer, fuller. "Hi," Leo said. "Hi, Evelyn," Chloe whispered. Evelyn's eyes filled instantly. She knelt down, just like she had that day in the market. "Hi, Chloe, you are so tall and so beautiful." "I'm 8 now," Chloe said, as if this explained everything. "8," Evelyn repeated, shaking her head in wonder. "Of course you are." She looked up at Leo, her gaze steady. "How are you?" "We're okay," he said. "You?" "I'm okay too." She stood up, brushing invisible lint from her jeans. An awkward silence descended. The crowd bustled around their private island of history. "Your booth is amazing," Leo said, gesturing. "You've built something incredible." "Thank you, it's been a lot of work." She paused, then seemed to make a decision. Would you like to see the studio? It's just a few blocks from here. I could make you some tea, if you have time." Leo looked at Chloe, who gave an almost imperceptible nod. "We'd like that," he said. Evelyn's studio was everything her old stall wasn't: organized, bright, thriving. Industrial shelves held neat stacks of yarn in every color imaginable. A large work table was covered in sketches and fabric swatches. On the wall, a business license hung in a frame, proof. She made tea in a small kitchenette. They sat on a worn, comfortable sofa. Chloe was mesmerized by a wall of framed magazine clippings and photos. "You did it," Leo said, the awe evident in his voice. "I did," Evelyn said, not with pride, but with a quiet acknowledgement of fact. "It's stable, it pays the bills, it's mine." She took a sip of tea. "I heard about you too." Claire came to a craft show I did last year. We had coffee. Leo nearly dropped his mug. What? Evelyn nodded. She found me. She said she wanted to apologize for any part she played in making me feel unwelcome. She said she saw how much I loved Chloe and that she was sorry if her fear made me feel judged. Evelyn's eyes were soft with the memory. We talked for an hour. It was healing. Leo was speechless. Claire had never mentioned it. This act of quiet grace from his ex-wife was perhaps the most surprising revelation of all. "Why did you leave?" Chloe asked suddenly, turning from the wall. The question was direct, fearless. "Was it because of me?" Evelyn's face crumpled for a second before she composed it. She went to Chloe, taking both her hands. "No, never because of you. I left because I was lost. I didn't know who I was. I thought I had to be perfect to deserve your dad, to deserve you. And when I couldn't be perfect, I ran. It was the biggest mistake of my life, but I had to make it to become someone who wouldn't run again." Chloe absorbed this, then threw her arms around Evelyn's neck in a fierce hug. Evelyn held her, closing her eyes, tears slipping free. Over Chloe's shoulder, her eyes met Leo's, wide with a hope so fragile it hurt to look at. When Chloe pulled back, she announced, "I have to go to the bathroom." Evelyn pointed down the hall, first door on the left. Once Chloe was gone, the room became charged with everything unsaid. "She's remarkable," Evelyn said, wiping her cheeks. "She is," Leo agreed. He set his tea down. "You've changed." "I hope so. Therapy, a lot of quiet time, learning that my worth isn't a group project." She took a deep breath. "Leo, I need to say this. I am so sorry for the way I left, for the hurt I caused you both. I was drowning, and instead of asking for a life preserver, I let go of the boat. It was cowardly and cruel." "You were in pain," he said. "I see that now. I didn't then. I just saw you leaving." "I know. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just needed you to know I'm sorry." "I forgive you," he said, and realized as he said it that it was true. The anger had burned away long ago, leaving only a sad, empty space. "And I'm sorry, too, for making you feel like you had to be fixed, for not understanding that my solutions felt like judgments." They sat in the quiet hum of the studio, two people who had loved and lost and survived. "The scarf," Leo said suddenly, "the Frostbury one, it's in Chloe's memory box. She outgrew it, but she couldn't bear to give it away." Evelyn smiled, a real, warm smile that reached her eyes for the first time. "I still make them, you know. They're my bestseller. I call it the First Snowfall Collection." Chloe returned then, breaking the moment. She went straight to the work table, pointing at a complex, half-finished cable knit pattern. "What's this?" Evelyn launched into an explanation, her hands moving as she described the technique. Leo watched them, his heart doing a slow, painful thaw. This was the connection he remembered, the easy flow of attention between them. They stayed for another hour. The conversation was careful, skirting the edges of the past, focusing on the present. When it was time to go, Evelyn walked them to the door. "Thank you for coming," she said. "It was really good to see you." "You too," Leo said. He hesitated, then asked the question that had been burning in him. "Will you be at the art fair tomorrow?" She nodded. "All weekend. Maybe we'll stop by again." "I'd like that." They didn't hug. The distance between them was still too vast, too charged. They simply said goodbye. In the car, Chloe was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "She's not sad anymore." "No," Leo agreed, "she's not." "Are you still in love with her?" The question, so blunt, so childishly direct, demanded an honest answer. He thought of the 2 years of quiet emptiness, the dates that went nowhere, the way his heart had just stuttered back to life at the sight of her. "Yes," he said, "I think I am." "Good," Chloe said, as if settling a matter. "Because she's still in love with you too, I could tell." They did go back the next day, and the day after that. Each visit was a little easier, a little less careful. They talked about safe things, Chloe's school, Evelyn's upcoming wholesale order, the unseasonably warm fall. On the third visit, Evelyn presented Chloe with a small knitted owl, the same colors as the old Frostbury scarf. "For your collection," she said. Chloe held it to her chest. It's perfect. When they left, Evelyn touched Leo's arm, a fleeting contact that sent a jolt through him. Leo, would you want to have dinner sometime? Just us, to talk, no expectations. He looked into her eyes, seeing the same vulnerable hope he'd seen in the market 2 years ago, but this time it was backed by a new strength. Yes, he said, I would. Dinner was at a small Italian restaurant, Neutral Ground. The conversation was different this time. They didn't talk about the past as a wound to be examined, but as a country they'd both traveled through. They talked about what they'd learned. Evelyn spoke about her therapy, about confronting her fear of being a burden. Leo spoke about learning to sit with uncertainty, to not try to engineer every emotion. I don't need you to be stable, Leo said, over tiramisu. I need you to be you, the you that's strong enough to tell me when you're not okay. And I don't need you to have all the answers, Evelyn replied. I just need you to hold my hand while we look for them together. It was a new treaty, written from a place of brokenness and repair. They took it slow, painfully slow. There were no more whirlwind weekends. There were Tuesday night dinners, Thursday afternoon texts. Evelyn was gradually reintroduced into Chloe's life, not as a sudden force, but as a gentle, returning presence. Claire was consulted and gave her cautious blessing. One Saturday, 6 months after their reunion at the art fair, Evelyn asked if they'd like to go to the farmer's market, the new one by the riverfront. Leo felt a spike of anxiety, but Chloe was enthusiastic. Yes, we can get cider. The new market was similar, yet different. The smells, the sounds, the feeling of community were the same. They wandered, and for the first time, Leo didn't feel the ghost of their old Saturdays haunting him. He felt the possibility of new ones. At the cider stand, they ran into Claire. She was with her boyfriend, a kind-eyed man named David. There was a moment of awkwardness, then Claire smiled and hugged Chloe. She nodded at Evelyn. It's good to see you. You too, Evelyn said. They stood together, the five of them, Leo, Evelyn, Chloe, Claire, and David, drinking cider in the autumn sun. It wasn't a perfect picture. It was messy, complicated, and real. A family not defined by a single household, but by a network of care. On the drive home, Chloe, holding Evelyn's hand in the back seat, said, "This was a good Saturday." Later that night, after dropping Evelyn at her studio apartment, she'd kept the small place even as her business grew. Leo walked her to her door. "I have something for you," Evelyn said. She went inside and came back with a small, flat package wrapped in brown paper. He opened it. It was a framed piece of textile art. In the center, woven from dozens of colors of yarn, was a perfect, intricate representation of a Frostbury scarf. Surrounding it, in delicate embroidery, were the words, "Can I share this table?" Leo's vision blurred. He looked from the gift to her face. "It's the question I never got to ask," Evelyn said softly. "That first day, I was just going to give the scarf and walk away, but you asked me to share your table. You changed everything." He pulled her into his arms, holding her as if for the first and last time all at once. "Ask me now," he whispered into her hair. She pulled back just enough to look into his eyes. "Leo, can I share this life? All of it. The messy, complicated, beautiful life." He answered with a kiss that held 2 years of loneliness, a lifetime of hope, and the simple, courageous truth they'd finally earned. Yes. That yes was the beginning of a different story. Not the fairy tale they might have imagined on that first cold market day, but something better, something real. Leo and Evelyn were married the following autumn, not in a cafe, but in the backyard of the home Leo had kept, surrounded by the new sprawling family they had built, Claire and David, Chloe beaming as the flower girl, friends from the market, and Evelyn's grandmother, present in every stitch of the lace on her dress. Evelyn's business continued to grow, but it was no longer her only proof of worth. It was simply her work, something she loved, that contributed to a life she helped build. Chloe, now 9, sometimes calls her Mom Evelyn, a title that makes Evelyn's eyes shine every time. Claire remains her mother, irreplaceable and central, but the map of Chloe's heart has expanded to include more love, not less. The Frostbury scarf is no longer in a memory box. It's framed, hanging in the front hallway of their home, right beside Evelyn's textile art. A reminder that the most fragile threads can sometimes be the strongest. This story was never really about a scarf or a market or even a single dad and a shy woman. It's about the space between seeing and being seen. It's about the courage it takes to translate quiet observation into a vulnerable act of care. Evelyn saw a man who would give away his own warmth, and she responded with warmth of her own making. That is the alchemy of human connection. We live in a world that often values the loud gesture, the grand romance, the flawless narrative. But the truth is, love and family are almost always built in the quiet, in the Saturday rituals, in the shared ciders, in the painful, necessary breaks that allow for stronger rebuilding, in the humble, terrifying question, can I share this table? Leo's first yes was an act of instinctive kindness. Evelyn's first yes was an act of breathtaking courage. Their second yes, years later, was an act of hard-won wisdom. They had to become the people who could hold the complexity, the grief, the fear, the joy, the sheer logistical mess of it all without needing it to be simple. So the next time you're in a crowded place and you see someone, really see them, holding a silent hope or carrying a quiet loneliness, remember this. The distance between a life of solitude and a life of profound connection can be as small as a ball of yarn, as simple as a shared bench, as brave as a whispered question. Your moment might not look like a farmer's market. It might be a coffee shop, a playground, a line at the grocery store, but the mechanism is the same. Notice, care, and then find the courage to reach out, however clumsily, and offer your thread. Because you never know, the life you change might just be your own. If this story resonated with you, if it reminded you of a moment of unexpected kindness in your own life, I'd love to hear about it. Share your story in the comments below. And if you want more real, human stories about connection, courage, and the quiet moments that change everything, make sure to subscribe. Thanks for listening.